Unfortunately, our political class is a little bit old, a little bit out of touch. I think they're going to wake up to this, though, because this is affecting their kids and their kids' friends, and you're going to see it arise more and more politically. I wish it happened sooner.
Midterm mayhem. The midterms are just a few months away. What could it mean for your life? We have all angles covered, including an extended interview as we catch up with former presidential candidate and current reality show contestant Andrew Yang. And that's just the start. As you can tell, this isn't your typical news show. Wait until you hear from our panel in a little bit, and then maybe you'll be convinced. But let's begin, as we do, with headlines in what we call the whip around. Oh, Mon. The truce with Iran officially collapsed. No resolution in sight. And the president lashing out at our ally, Oman, saying, quote, if Oman gets in the way, I will bomb the blank out of them. Where's the beef? Beef prices remain high. Beef sales remain low, down 0.3% between Memorial Day and July 4th. Sounds small, but the past 2 years in the same time period, sales were up 5%. And the murder trial of Dwayne Keffy D. Davis, the former gang leader accused of masterminding the 96 killing of hip-hop legend Tupac Shakur, officially began with opening statements in Vegas. And Andrew Yang will join us very shortly, but first, with less than 3 months until the midterms, the battle for Congress is turning into an absolute, battle. Scripps News political director Andrew Rafferty is here to catch us up. All right, Andrew, the president's approval rating is historically low, but it doesn't appear, at least to me, that Democrats are converting disapprovers into votes the way they did in 2018. Now, that said, James Carville, our good Democratic strategist friend, predicted Trump will feel like he, quote, got punched in the mouth by Mike Tyson. Is this actually that good of an environment for Democrats, or is it a mirage?
Well, look, when you talk about the environment, there are a few things you got to look at. And you mentioned one of the big ones, and that's the president's approval. I was just looking at the New York Times polling averages. It has him about 37% approval, about 22 points underwater. Compare that back to 2018, which is, I think, the benchmark that we'll be going back to a lot. The midterms in his first year was only about 12 points underwater. So certainly a point for the Democrats there. Then you look at the congressional generic ballot, basically asking people, wait, in November, are you going to vote for the Democrat, the Republican? Democrats have an advantage, very similar to what they had in 2018 when they did well, picked up the House of Representatives. Economic factors, people are just down on the economy overall. That's more of sort of the trend lines going up. Are people going to feel more optimistic heading into November than they do right now? That's one thing that's kind of an X factor right now to watch for.
And now another wrench. Money makes strange bedfellows, as you know better than anybody in D.C. But apparently Elon Musk and President Trump have made up, or at least made up to the tune that Elon is going to put $100 million, $120 million from his super PAC to help Republicans in the midterm. Could that make a difference?
Well, certainly make a difference. I think a lot of those Republicans will gladly take that financial support as long as Elon Musk himself kind of stays on the sidelines. He is still pretty politically toxic. If you're trying to turn out some of those moderate voters, they remember his days of Doge, of course, as you mentioned, the unceremonious parting between him and President Donald Trump. It's interesting, though, he put in a bunch of money in a judicial race in Wisconsin, about $25 million not too long ago. And the conservative candidate did not win. And we have seen on both sides, outside groups put in a lot of money in Michigan Senate race. There was a bunch of APAC money behind Haley Stevens, the Democratic Senate candidate there. And she ultimately didn't come out on top. So we are seeing some really interesting trends when it comes to outside spending has not always boosted specific candidates in the way that it has in the past.
Two more quick questions, and I'll let you run first. Redistricting, in my mind, could be the wild card. You have Texas, California, other states redrawing the map. So how much could redistricting alone decide who controls the House, separate from how voters actually feel about President Trump?
Yeah, this is huge. It goes into what we were just talking about with how many seats are realistically in play, because going back to the 2020 redistricting, which is normally once a decade when you do it, we had seen a solidifying of red and blue districts. And now looking at some of the worst case and best case scenarios, we see that, GOP is almost certainly going to pick up 2 or 3 extra seats based on just a redistricting alone. They could pick up a lot more. You mentioned some of those Texas seats. California, the Democrats tried to counteract this a little bit. It was not as successful as they had hoped. Virginia, not too far from where I am, tried to redraw their lines. A court struck them down. And so, there could be some surprises in terms of when you create these new districts, you have to get it from somewhere. You have to kind of split up these districts somehow. And it could make some potentially more competitive ones that we're not really seeing right now. But the worst case for Dems is they could lose up to 11 or so, and GOP could pick up double digits just based on the math alone. Not even the sentiment, not even, how people are feeling about Donald Trump, but just this idea that these districts, which were once potentially battlegrounds, are now firmly in GOP camp. They are coming out ahead when it comes to this redistricting.
And quickly, I'm keeping my eye open on Ohio Republican Max Miller. Says he's staying in the race despite the domestic abuse allegations from his ex-wife. How many House races could actually come down to individual candidates blowing up rather than the national mood?
Yeah, it has been a tough year for candidates across the political spectrum. You mentioned Max Miller, Eric Swalwell, remember, running for governor in California, Tony Gonzalez, Graham Plattner, of course, in Maine. We've just had a lot of male politicians and candidates who have had to unceremoniously either exit the race or not seek re-election in their campaign bids because of some of these scandals. I think for the most part, we're talking about, we're in August here. We hopefully are beyond any more bombshells like that dropping. If you think about how there was that political reckoning in really all industries of life, but certainly when it comes to Capitol Hill after the Me Too movement, we are not that far beyond what we saw behavior-wise over the past, 5 or 6 years. It seems like these things are still going on, and they are imperiling candidates from both the Republican and Democratic side.
Andrew Rafferty, he knows his stuff. We're going to be checking in with you a lot before November. Good to see you, and thanks for the time.
Thanks, Jon.
All right, let's stay off script now. He's a former presidential candidate, co-founded the Forward Party. He's a CEO, a reality show contestant. He wants to tax AI and give every family $15,000. I recently caught up with Andrew Yang. And Andrew Yang is with us now. Good to see you, Andrew.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me, Jon.
All right, got to start with the reality show. Many branded you in 2020 when you were running for president as the smartest guy in the room, the numbers guy. Now you're on a Fox show called Nation's Dumbest, competing not to be crowned the dumbest person in America next to the likes of Ice-T and Carmen Electra. What made you say yes? And honestly, were you worried about losing?
No, I was pitched by the producers that it would be family fun programming, and I'm a dad myself, got a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old. So they said, look, it's going to be fun and wholesome. Like, are you smarter than a 5th grader? Plus, I grew up an Ice-T fan and a Carmen Electra fan and a fan of some other folks. So I thought it would be a good time. And you'd have to watch the show. Did I regret saying yes at certain points? I probably did. But it wound up honest. It was a great experience.
All right, let's move on to some more serious issues, a lot of which you talk about a lot. One is, I know you talk a lot about AI-driven job loss, especially in white-collar jobs. My question for you is AI-driven job loss now bigger than, say, immigration, inflation, political division as the single biggest threat to our country over the next few years? And if it is, why isn't anybody running on it in the midterms?
I think it's a more immediate concern, particularly for recent college graduates, Jon. And you can see the numbers going down for computer science grads, for folks who work in customer service, and underemployment employment for recent college graduates is now up to almost 50%. So you have a lot of young people heading home with a lot of school loans and no job to show for it. I think this should be front and center. Unfortunately, our political class is a little bit old, a little bit out of touch. I think they're going to wake up to this, though, because this is affecting their kids and their kids' friends, and you're going to see it arise more and more politically. I wish it happened sooner.
Yeah, good point. And look, you touched on tangentially the economy, people being worried about their jobs. So now you did float the idea of $1,000 a month per adult. Now you're talking about, I believe, $15,000 per family. Walk me through the math. Is it feasible?
Well, first, you have to understand that these AI models were built upon our data, and our data is being sold and resold for about $300 billion a year right now. These AI companies are about to IPO to $1 trillion or more valuation, and we're not seeing a dime of it unless you're an insider that happen to have access to that pre-IPO stock. So the average American is feeling this pressure and more value getting extracted up to the cloud. So in my view, this money would be returning value to us that has already been siphoned or harvested based upon the use of our data that we never saw a dime for, and again provides the foundation of all of these AI companies.
Yeah, that's interesting. I want to ask you about something that's been front and center for you for a long time, but I still don't believe that a lot of Americans understand it, and that is ranked choice voting. Can you give us just the quick thumbnail of what is ranked choice voting?
How many people have held their nose and voted for the lesser of two evils in one race or another? I certainly have. Most
All the
people
time.
have. And ranked choice voting is a more modern representative voting system that ensures that the person who wins actually has majority appeal and makes it so that you can't waste your vote because you can vote for the person you really like first and then the person you think maybe has a greater chance of winning second. So you can't be bullied into voting for someone you didn't actually prefer. And this is a voting system that's in effect in other countries and other parts of the world. And what you've seen is that it tends to moderate the results and make it so that the more antagonistic, inflammatory candidates don't actually get rewarded, because what they're going to do is they're going to excite and animate 35% of people, but they're going to turn off another 60%. So you wind up with better candidates, better process, and then better leaders, better representatives.
So my opinion always has been it's very hard to argue against ranked choice voting. It just kind of makes sense. That being said, Elon Musk right now, I think, is spending money in Alaska to repeal ranked choice voting. Why? And I guess the other question is, would you accept an endorsement from him should you run for higher office again, given this news?
Ranked choice voting is good for people. It's good for democracy. It's bad for control. It's bad for saying we know who's going to win and we're going to see to it that our person prevails. So I disagree with Elon on this. I think ranked choice voting is a necessity if we're going to get the kind of positive politics we would need to solve some of the problems that are coming down the pike, including AI-driven job loss. That said, I'm not in the practice of expecting people to agree with me on everything. And I think one of the antidotes we need in our politics is to be able to agree to disagree with people at different points in time and with different ideological backgrounds.
So would you say yes if he wanted to endorse you? Would you embrace that?
No, I admire Elon. I think he's done a lot for innovation in the environment. And if he wants to solve problems, I'll certainly take him up on it.
All right, I want to get to the Forward Party now, the party that you co-founded. There's so many polls out there that say that Americans are aggravated with the two-party system. The Forward Party now has, and keep me honest here, official ballot status in New Mexico, 23 candidates running for the Utah legislature, a candidate for governor in Tennessee. So there are real inroads happening here, but why aren't more people talking about it? Why isn't the media talking about it more?
Well, it's one reason I'm grateful to be here with you, John, is that a lot of the media actually prefers the blue versus red, us versus them drama of the day rather than a real reform effort. And there are independent candidates in Idaho and South Dakota that are now one-on-one with the incumbent, and there's no Democrat in those races because they dropped out, realizing that they would not have a chance of winning in those particular states. So the Forward Party is growing all over the country. We're up to 79 elected officials. We'll be well past 100 after this November. And people are waking up. Thank you for shining a spotlight on our efforts. My co-chair is Christy Todd Whitman, who is the two-time governor of New Jersey. She's a former Republican. I'm a former Democrat. More and more Americans are fed up with the two-party status quo. 50% of Americans say we're independents, and that's where the growth is going to be.
Funny enough, Governor Whitman is going to join us next month on this program, but more about that later. So you are predicting some wins in November for the Forward Party. Any idea how many wins we're talking about?
We're looking at dozens of wins in races around the country for a state rep, city council, county executive, school board. I mean, we think all of these races are important. There are 500,000 plus local contests, and we're going to contend in more and more of them. Meanwhile, the folks in the national media and in DC will say nothing to see here, nothing to see here. But again, we have 2 U.S. Senate candidates. We have multiple members of Congress who are now affiliated with Forward. And if we get 1 or 2 U.S. senators into the Capitol in January, then that's a game changer. And there's a real chance of that happening in November.
So 2 final questions before we let you go. The first is, and I'm not going to ask you the old, are you going to run for president question, because I think that's been asked and answered a lot. But what I do want to ask you is there a specific kind of real world benchmark that hit or missed that will actually help you decide whether you run in 2028? Like, is there a trigger?
No, for me, the trigger is whether we can actually build an alternative to the two-party status quo that more and more Americans know that we need. And that's not an Andrew Yang thing or a Governor Christy Todd Whitman thing. That's like a millions of Americans thing. So if we see that we can actually catalyze a real alternative infrastructure building movement, then that would get me very, very excited. I'm not someone who grew up dreaming about being president myself. I'm the son of immigrants. This country's been amazing to me and my family. I want it to be amazing to your kids, to my kids, to all the generations that are coming after us. And no one thinks that we're on that path right now, in part because the two parties are not designed to solve our problems. They're designed to pit us against each other and make us fear and even hate our neighbors.
So are you going to run?
If there are pieces in place, John, I'm still very, very much a patriot and want to do what I can for the country.
So last question. I read in your newsletter, I think it was in January, February, that you predicted Democrats win the House, close the gap in the Senate, Republicans lose by a landslide. Now we're less than a few months out. Do you still believe that landslide prediction?
Oh, I think the popular discontent with the Republican administration is very, very high, in part because you're seeing affordability concerns everywhere, from the grocery store to the gas pump to insurance bills, and on and on. Credit card delinquencies right now are at 13%, which is a multi-year high. There's a lot of pain out there, John, a lot of suffering. And that tends to lead to an anti-incumbency wave.
Andrew Yang, CEO of his own company, reality show star, co-founder of the Third Party. So good to see you, and thanks for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on, John. More to come.
All right, let's go side by side with our esteemed panel. Simon and Steph are here. Steph, I want to start with you. Look, when I was in college, I knew people who dealt a little bit of pot, but now news is coming out about a pretty big cocaine ring being run out of a Penn State fraternity house. And allegedly, the ringleader was discovered because he was using his personal Venmo with his real name. Your thoughts, Steph?
This is a completely insane story. I actually read somewhere online that a lot of these drug deals were taking place via Snapchat. And I think this is every parent's worst nightmare is to receive a phone call that your kids have not only been arrested for drugs, but for dealing heavy drugs. The only reservation that I'm having about this entire story is that the mugshots that I keep seeing all over the internet are showing these kids in their suits versus the fact that they just committed what seems to be a RICO. And so I think this is just sending a shockwave through the fraternity, sorority, and college environments for sure.
Simon, weigh in.
I think we need to go back to the days where frat guys were just drinking beer and going to the gym. Cocaine dealing, that's wild.
That was us, just drinking and going to the gym.
Simpler times.
All right, let's move on. Simon, give me an underreported story of the week.
I want to talk AI. Obviously, not underreported. All we talk about is AI this, AI that. But one thing that felt like it materialized this week was a bit of a pushback to AI in the physical space that it can take up and some of the physical costs. 404 Media had this interesting story where they basically looked at how AI companies are buying up books, using them to train AI models, and then what happens to those books? They get destroyed. Some of this has been reported before. These AI companies are buying them, they're training their models off of them. But this story was interesting because they tracked a book from a bookstore. It ended up in an Amazon warehouse in Las Vegas. And in training them, they basically, take the bind off, read all the pages, upload it to these AI models. And, you could argue that we don't need 5 million copies of every book and that some of this could produce good results, but it's caused a lot of concern, a lot of chatter online because, historically, when you look at where have books been destroyed, it's been these authoritarian regimes. So causing a lot of concern that AI is coming over or is rather taking over. And I think we're seeing that on the political side, too. A lot of these politicians that were all in on AI, we saw Governor Shapiro in Pennsylvania saying that AI companies won't be first in line for construction permits anymore. And in Texas gubernatorial race, it's playing a big role with the Democratic candidate accusing Governor Abbott of really, being a spokesperson for AI. So I think we're starting to see that pendulum swing a little bit the other way on AI.
Yeah, the whole thing's so interesting. I got an email not too long ago because I wrote a book back in 2014 and they sent me an email and said, put your book's title in this search bar to find out if companies are using it to train AI. And they were, and then they ask if you want to join a lawsuit, etc. Crazy times here. Stephanie, let me get to you finally. And that is, what are you and your friends talking about this week? What's on your mind?
Yeah, we're talking about a little bit of everything, but going back to college students, I hate to pick on them today, but there's been a big debate online because at Tuskegee University, there are some students who actually were outraged online because their chancellor have outlawed wearing pajamas to class. And so one big debate we've been having amongst our friend group is whose job is it to teach professionalism for future students? Is it the school's responsibility or the parents? But for me, pajamas are always a no for class.
Yes or no, Simon? Is it okay to wear pajamas to class at your alma mater, Michigan?
If the professor's making me fall asleep, then I will come to class in pajamas. It's on the professor to keep everyone up. I was a suit and tie, 3-piece tux every day I went to class.
Stephanie says no PJs. Simon says it's okay. Well, look, I want to thank you both so much. Steph, we'll see you next week. Simon, this is our farewell to you. Simon won't be joining us anymore, but Simon, you've been amazing, wonderful, and we love you. And maybe you'll join us as a viewer in the future. So thanks to you both.
Excited to watch you guys.
And please come back.
Everyone has an opinion, and we want to hear yours. Text me 202-968-2449. What do you make of Iran, the economy? Do you want to join the panel? Text me and come on, weigh in, be part of the program. I hope we've done our part to catch you up. I'm Jon Leiberman.